Hello, everyone. You're welcome to a beautiful workshop on Google Sheets. So today I would be showing you how to make use of formulas and say functions, not just how, but when to use them. And we will be dealing with financial data to do that. So hopefully I would break it down in very simple form so that you can understand. All right. So we could call this financial analysis with Google Sheets, right? So yeah, I think that's what this is. But it doesn't matter whatever domain you are in, but it's these are more frequent, problems that comes and the kind of formulas that should be used and how to understand when to use them. Okay, so I would go ahead and share my screen right now so we can just head into the game. Okay, so right now we have a customer's sheet, a page, or table, and we have transactions. Then we have questions. So here are the questions we want to answer. So for this video, we would try to see how to answer up to these 20 questions, or less, it depends. Okay, now let's do this. It says here, retrieve. It says here, retrieve the full name of the customers. Okay, so this is gonna be easy, right? I would share this data set with you. So if you check in the description, you are going to see the link that would redirect you to this data set, so you could also download and use for yourself. Okay, now we have this transactions and we have customer, right? But the question we're trying to answer here is retrieve the full name of the customer. So I would show you multiple ways. All right. So I had written full name here. Okay. So there is nothing under the full name. So we have the first name and the last name. So retrieving the full name means we want to get the combination of these two names. So there are multiple ways to handle that. I will start with the shortcuts or the easiest way. Yes, we start with an equal to sign, and then just click on this, okay, and then your ampersand symbol and this. That's all. Press enter, and you have this. However, we see that the names are meshed. Okay, so this can be called concatenation. All right, so the names are meshed together, but it doesn't really make much sense. So we need to separate them, give a space or something between them. So this is how to do that. So I will do and I will use my double quotes, and then I add another symbol. Now look what's going to happen. If I do this, it still gives me that because I just did the double quotes, but I did not indicate that it should be a space. So all I just need to do is put a space inside that those double quotes, and then when I do this, I have that. I can drag this, and get who I need. So you see for Adaobi Okafor, that's a full name here. Tunde Akinola, that's a full name here. All right. So it's as simple as that. Another way we could use is join. Okay. So let me do that here. So I could say equal to, and then I will use the function called join. All right. So it says here, if you check here, it says here it should start with the delimiter. So delimiter just simply means something that should separate, the words you are choosing. So I would still put this in double quotes, just the same way we did. And remember, just put the space, right? So I just wanted to have a space. And then I am saying it should give me this to this. So that's B3 column C3. And that's all. So when I hit my enter key, it gives me this Tunde Akinola. Okay. If I drag this, I would get the same kind of concept or result with this particular word. So anyone is okay. However, I want to mention some other things. For example, let's say we have B2, C2, which Adalbi came first, Okafor came second. Now, if we want to make it look like the last name should come first before the first name, you know what you do. You just change this to C2, and then you change this to B2. Okay, and then you have this. Most times, when the surname comes first, some persons prefer to put a comma, right? So you just do that, and then you have Okafor Adalbi. Now let's try that for this. We want to switch things up. So I will put the C tree here, right? And I put the B tree here. Look what happens. Nothing changes. It still gives me the Tunde Akinara. Okay? So if I do this, if I put the comma, it's still going to work, right? But it's not correct because Tunde is the first name, Akinola is the last name. So you have to understand, the formulas or the functions you are using. That's why there's always a helper, for these functions. And when you click it, it explains certain things to you. So to adjust this to make sure we have, the the surname first or the last name first and then the first name. So instead of doing this, because when you let me explain why C3 to B3 won't work, it's still going to give you this because when you do a range, it doesn't matter which you put first. Okay, it's going to rearrange the order and start from the out. It's going to rearrange it in an alphabetical order. Okay, so it will start from B3 to C3, even though you indicated C3 to B3 because you put a colon there, so it is a range. A range always starts from the least to the highest. So even though I press my enter, let's go back to the formula to see what it's saying. You see, it has adjusted it to B3 to C3. So how am I going to achieve this with my join? So what I would do is I would put my C3 here, and then I do a comma, and then I type in my B3, and I have this. So you can see now this is done. All right. So if I still copy this, I'm going to have the last name and the first name. So yes, there are different scenarios that join might be, a better choice to the shortcuts, using this. And aside that, the join is cleaner, just have this and you do all that. If you want to have like multiple names, for example, let's say you have let's say this account type is also a name. So you would have to join this again, and say, and maybe with a space, and then you add another person, and then you say D2, right? Then you get this. But for join, all you just need to do is a comma, and you have a D2, and then you have this. All right. So yes, so that's the difference. So I'll just remove this space and I have this. So that's the difference. So it is easier it is neater to use join when it becomes complex. All right. But when you are using the shortcuts, you just have to, it's better when you are using it for simple concatenations. Okay, so that's the difference between the okay. So let's use join since it's more of the recommended one. I'm recommending that for complex things. Okay, so I do this and I have this all over. But anyways, I'm not interested in the first name and surname. So let me just change this to a range, and let's say B2 to C2. And I don't need the comma, I just want the space. So yes, so just double clicking it at this edge, we can have that fill the entire column. Okay, so we've succeeded in solving question one. And let's go to the second one. It says find the branch and account type for a specific account number. So when we talk about the branch and account type for a specific account number, then we are dealing with if you check customers table, There is nothing like branch or account type. Okay, there is account type, but there is no branch. So if I check transactions, I would see that this is where I can get the account type and I can get the branch. So the question says we need the branch and the account type, but it should be for a specific account number. All right. So let's pick out this account number here. Okay, and then I would create another sheet here, so it's not going to be complicated. Now let me just paste this account number here. Okay, so I would call this account number, and then I want to get the branch and the account type. Yep. Now to get this branch, I would use something called VLOOKUP. Okay, so I would use VLOOKUP because I think VLOOKUP is a better fit in this case. All right. We have different functions you can use to look up a table. There's XLOOKUP, there is HLOOKUP, there is VLOOKUP. You could even use index and match. Okay, so we'll touch some of those things if it's necessary from the list of questions. All right, so now VLOOKUP is one of the most used functions because that's what we are trying to focus on. Is one of the most used functions when you are trying to look for something in a table. So that's what it means. Look for this particular item. So what it means is, let me shift this. What it means is for this account number, I want you to look at this transactions table and then get me the branch. I want you to look at this transactions table and then get me the account type. Okay. Now, the V in the lookup, the V in the VLOOKUP statement means vertical, meaning that it's going to look down, okay, just down this column. And this is the whole idea about VLOOKUP. What it just means is look down this whole column and give me the next item beside that value. That's what it means. Look down this whole column and give me the next item beside that value. So this is how we are going to achieve that. I would go to this and I would say equal to the lookup. So I would say the lookup and I would search for this key, right? So now I'm searching for this. So I'm clicking on this. I put my comma and I'm telling it to look down that particular column. Okay, so it's asking me for the range in which this column exists. So I would go to transactions and I will click on B2 and I will just put my column and type B, meaning that it should scan from the first row to the last row. Okay, and then I put my comma. Remember, I said that VLOOKUP means that I would look for this particular number, down that column, and then provide the next value beside it. Now, the next value can be determined by you. Do I want the value beside it in terms of the one just directly beside it, or do I want any other value that is beside it? Okay, so do I want we have like multiple columns beside the column B, right? There is B, there is C, there is D, there is E, and the rest. Now, if the value I want to bring should be from C or from D, then I have to indicate it here. That's the value I want, which is beside it. Okay, so that means that VLOOKUP can only give you values that comes after the column that you are looking for. Okay, so now let's do this. There is going to be a challenge if I just do B to B because this is the only column I'm declaring. So because the value I'm trying to look for exists in the columns beside it, so I have to change this my range to give me the ones that would exist like after that, right? So I would say because I want the account type and the branch type, so I would say this should be B to D, right? So you can see that it's highlighting, these three columns. Now, the next thing is the index. You don't have to memorize this. If you click on the question symbol beside the formula, you're going to see the helper formula. All right. So the next thing is the index. Index means the position, which means in this range that I have selected, which of the columns do I want to get the value from? Okay. Which of the columns do I want to get the values from? So this is column 1, this is column 2, this is column 3. So those numbers I just mentioned are the indexes. Index means position. So if I say I want it for the branch type, then I would say I want it for number 3. So it's going to give me the branch. Okay. Then there is another command here which says is sorted. So most times, commonly we use 0 or false. Okay, meaning that the data is not arranged in an ascending order. So don't give me results based on the ordering of the data. So just imagine that this data is not arranged. And so if I press my enter key, I have this. Let me make this bold. I have this. So this tells me now that this account number belongs to this branch. I can do the same thing for the account type, right? Because if you check the transactions, account type is on this column too. So that means if all I just need to do is to use the same formula and change the index. So this is 1, 2, and 3. Remember that we use 3 for the branch, but for the account type, we would use 2. Okay, so I would change this. And I would use 2. So this tells me that this is the account number, this is the branch, and this is the account type. Let's test it with another account number. So if I come here and I choose this third one, so I should see that it is a savings account type and the branch is Enugu. So let's try that here. So all I just need to do is do this, paste this, and then you see I have this account number, I have Enugu, and I have savings. So eventually, that is how we can get this whole thing. Okay. So another smart way of doing this. So instead of pasting or typing an account number, you could as well just do a drop down of the account numbers. So all I could do is I would click on this and I would click on data. I would choose data validation. I will add a rule, and then there are different rules. So I could just type it here, but things I want to get it from a particular, this is more like the process of automating things, right? So I would choose here and I say I want a drop down from a range. So when I click on this, I'll click on this window box here, and I would see this. It's telling me to select a range. Okay, you can see something, a drop down has appeared here, right? Now, it's telling me to select a range. So what I would do is come to transactions, and I would just highlight this column from B2 to B, meaning that it should just take it to the end of the column. And when I click OK and I click done here, I go to sheet 5, close this. You see that if I choose, you can see the list of account numbers. Now, one thing about data validation is even though the account number appears multiple times on the source page, it's going to only display the unique account numbers. Okay, so then I would choose this, and then I have this. Okay, yeah. All right. So let's see the next question. The next question says, lists all unique branches and the number of accounts in each branch. The next says list all unique branches and the number of accounts in each branch. That's interesting. So these are the branches, and you can see that there are, you can see Lagos, Abuja. So there are repetitions here. So to get a unique branch, I'll probably create another sheet so it's not going to be rough. So to get a unique branch, what I would do is just unique. It's still the word unique, right? So I would use my function called unique, and then I would come to transactions. And all I would just do is to choose from D2 to D. And these are the branches. So I could just type these branches. All right. So these are the branches. Okay. So we have just 5 branches. That's what it means. Okay. So it has, taken off the duplicate. So that's what your unique function is. There's nothing serious about it, just unique. And then you put the range of values you want to get the unique items from. Or if you are trying to, fight duplicates, that's like the best function to use. Okay. Now the next question there, it's still the same question anyway. So it says, list all unique branches and the number of accounts in each branch. So that means we are not done with this. So what we need is the number of accounts, right? So what we need is a number of accounts. So in each branch. Now, this is interesting because here we have Abuja, and here we have Abuja, and here we have Abuja. So that means we have, if we count the accounts here, they would probably happen multiple times. But we have to be very careful because the question says number of accounts in its branch. So there is a possibility that you could have repetition of account numbers here, right? Let's see this. So let's try. Let's see if we have repetitions here. I haven't seen, but since this is transaction, so it is possible that a particular account number could, transact maybe multiple times. Let me do a Control F and find out this. Awesome. So you can see that I checked for this account number, and I am seeing that there are 34 of them here. So this is a challenge with persons when we are trying to analyze. You have to be careful because you could bring out a result that it comes out well, but it is not correct. For example, if I want to say the number of accounts, a simple function would be count if, right? It would be count if. So now this counts if, I would say it's counting based on a condition. If is a conditional statement. So it's a simple function that says count from a particular range. So it's as simple as, what do I want to count? I want to count from this range of the branches, right? Say that is D2 to D. And what is the criteria? So let's say the criteria is Abuja, right? And I close my parentheses and I click OK. So it tells me number of accounts in Abuja are 85. That's what it means, because I'm saying it should count, all the Abujas in this column. And it's telling me that, oh, based on that, you have 85 accounts. But do we really have 85 accounts for just Abuja? Let's test. Let us check the number of accounts, the number of unique accounts. So I would use a function called count unique. Yeah, I'll use a function called count unique. And then I'm saying that it should count unique values. So I want to count from B2 to B. Can you see that all the transactions, all the account numbers in this bank are just 20, then how is it possible that the number of accounts in one of the branches of this bank is 85 when we have only 20 for across all the branches? So you see where issues could arise because you didn't take your time to analyze it. That's why a concept called exploratory data analysis is necessary, where you just do a rough check of the values or certain things about the data before you go deeper into the analysis. So this is one of the things you probably do in exploratory data analysis to find out the number of unique accounts that exist. So seeing this would make you understand that this analysis is wrong. All right. So how can we achieve this? How can we resolve this? What we need to do is in number of accounts, not number of transactions in each branch. That's what is written here. List all unique branches and the number of accounts in each branch. If what we were looking for was number of transactions, if that value we got initially would have been right, but we are looking for the number of accounts. So what we would do is we are going to use a simple function again, which is counts unique. But in this case, it is also with a condition, which is count unique ifs. Recall that when we wanted to solve the initial one, we use a count if, right? Sorry. We use a count if to get that because we are trying to look on we are trying to look for the number of something based on another thing. So that is a condition. You are trying to count based on a condition. You are not just counting, but you want to count based on the fact that this has a branch called Abuja or this has a branch called Lagos. All right. So that means a condition needs to be involved in that function. So if I'm counting the unique ones, knowing that I'm looking for the number of accounts, not the number of transactions, so I need to count the unique account numbers there. And I'm not just counting the unique account numbers, I'm also counting it based on a function. So I'll use the count ifs. So there is no count if like without an s. There are some formulas in spreadsheets that you have if and you also have ifs. Okay, more like if you want to check multiple conditions, that's why you have the s after the if. But if it's just one condition, then you won't see the s. Okay, so it's just if. But in count if, it is just there for count, which is expecting that you're counting based on multiple conditions. However, all the functions that has an s does not mean you must use it if you are trying to get multiple conditions. You can use those kind of functions even when you are trying to filter based on a condition. Okay, so this is one example. I'm using count ifs, but the condition is just one. So it's asking me, what range am I counting? Okay, so the range I'm counting, which should look for only the unique items, is this range, which is B2 to B. And then what is the criteria range? That means what is the range that I want to filter for, or the range I want to apply my condition on. Okay, so now I would use I'm talking about the branch, right? That's where the condition is. So I would do a D2 to D. Okay, and then what is the criteria? Okay, that's the criterion here. What is the criteria? So the criteria is that this should be Abuja. And when I do this, it tells me that there are just 3 accounts in Abuja. Just 3 accounts in Abuja versus the 85 that we had there. So you see that the number of accounts is different from the number of transactions. So you need to be aware. All right. So to make this flexible or scalable across all things here, it's not very good to hard code. So in any way possible, it will be best to, reduce your manual um inputs in your formulas. So instead of typing in the Abuja, I would just say it's going to be B2. Okay. It should give me the same value. All right. Okay. Now look at something here. If I drag this down, I'll see 36344. It might be correct, but it might not be correct. Why? If I look at this formula, this says transactions B2 to B, transactions D2 to D. Remember we explained what these things are. But let's look at this. It's giving me B3 to B, D3 to D. That's the range it's fetching from has changed to B3 to B. The range this is fetching from has changed to B4 to B. And the last one here is B6 to B. What it means here is that if I go to the transactions, it's keeping these parts from B2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it is scanning it from this. So imagine that. Let's look at something here. Let's look at Lagos is from B3 to B. So let's look at transactions. That means it's fetching from this B3 to B. Okay. So luckily, this row is not Lagos, is Abuja. So you might not even see that there was an error in your formula because it will give you a right result. Okay. I would explain it better very soon. Now, this is Enugu. Enugu is B4 to B. Let's check out transactions. Where is B4? This is B4. Luckily, too, Enugu does not exist before here. So the range is starting from here. So there is a possibility that it might come out well. Okay. This is Kanu. Kanu is coming from this. So the thing is, imagine that let's look at this. Imagine that this is Lagos. Imagine that this is Lagos. Okay. You discovered nothing changes here. Okay, Lagos started up here, right? So let's imagine that this is where should I use? Let me see what Enugu says. Enugu is B4 to B. Okay. Okay, Enugu is B4 to B. So that means the range is starting from here, B4 to B. Okay. So let's imagine that let's say Enugu exists here. Let's say Enugu exists here. And this is it's changing here because of the formula I used here. So it's giving me a unique transaction. So that means it's choosing Abuja, then Enugu, so it's in that order. So when I added this here, it's changing and it's trying to prove me wrong. Okay, but let's do this. Now let's assume that I copy this and I just paste it normal without the formula, and let's see what happens. So let's say this is let's put Lagos here. Okay, let's put Lagos here. Now you see that nothing changed. The count is still B3 to B, right? And the number is 6. But I just added Lagos in that list. But because Lagos also appeared in B2, but from that formula, Lagos is starting from is scanning these columns from this B3. So it's going to skip this, right? So those are things that you have to be careful of. So when you do a formula, you need to be sure about how you want to spread it across, especially when you want to drag something down. You need to lock those formulas. For example, I would lock this with, this is called absolute referencing. So if I use my dollar symbol here to lock this, what I'm saying is that I'm trying to avoid that range from being changed. Okay. So since these are constants, so this is how I establish my constants. So when I use my dollar symbol here, So what I'm saying is, if I drag this down, nothing changes. You can see that I did not put the dollar symbol in B2 because what I'm saying is if I drag this down, only the B2 should change. If you click here, you see that this is going to be B3, right? If you click here, it's going to be B4. So, but in this case, B4, this is changing, and this is changing. But I want only this to change if I drag it down, right? Because these are the values that should be changing. This is B2, this is B3, and this is B4. So I only want the references in this function to change and not the ranges, okay? So if I drag this down, you discover that Lagos should be 7. Why? Because it's now scanning from the first one. If I click on this, you can see it still gives me the B2 to B, and the only thing that changed here is B3. If I drag this down to this point here, you see nothing really changed, right? Because luckily for the data sets or for the analyst that is working on this, it kind of narrowly escapes because of the way the data was arranged. But how about when more data comes up and maybe Port Harcourt comes, up? Let's look at this now. If I read, let me just go back to the previous formula, and let's say I chose Port Harcourt. In this transaction table, maybe Port Harcourt appeared, somewhere here, and then I come to this, you see, it's still showing 4. But if I drag this formula that we did, oh my God, if I drag this formula, you see, it's now 5 because I added, something there. So, but imagine not locking these things. It would give you a wrong count. And then, your analysis might be wrong, and that's dangerous because analysts produce what, affects or triggers the decisions or the decisions, yeah, from the business owner. So imagine giving them a very wrong number and then they make a decision based on the errors that you produce, how bad it could be for the company. All right, so these are little foxes that can destroy the vine. Okay, so now let's I will just revert this to what it was. Yep. Yeah, okay, so what we will just do here is to lock this. Okay, just lock these, lock these, lock these, and lock this. All right. And that's that. So we have in Abuja 3 accounts. In Lagos, we have 6 accounts. In Enugu, we have 3 accounts and the rest. Okay. Yes. So another way you could get that is from your customers' sheets as well. You could also achieve that from your customer sheets. Okay. It is easier to achieve it even from here because in this your customer sheets, all the account names here are unique. So I just need a count if and I will get it, right? So if I do this, I could come here to my sheet here and let's try that. So I will just use a count if. Okay, it's asking which range, so I'll just go to customers sheets and I will use this to E. Okay, and then it's asking me the criteria. So I will just say Abuja, right? If I click this, it gives me um those information. Okay, so if I do this and all I need to do is to lock this. I need to lock this. So remember, we are talking about a range that should be the same across board. You have to lock it before you drag it out. So if I drag this down, you see, I have exact thing here. So this is like a longer route, but all depends on how you understand your data. So knowing that the customer sheet has like unique values. So these are just the customer. So you cannot see repetition of a customer in a customer list. It's just one row for a unique customer. So it is easier to just do your count if, there. But if you are going to work with transactions that, require multiple or duplicates, in that particular sheet or table, then you have to be careful with the kind of formula or the logic you have to apply because you have to first get the unique account details, okay, or transaction before you get, the filtering. All right, so that is, yes, that is that. Okay, now we're done with this question, and let's move on to the next one. So the next is, what is the earliest and latest transaction date for each account? Now, this is very interesting. What is the earliest and latest transaction date for each account? For each account. So that means, first of all, we need to have, all the accounts, right? So I could just still go back to this customer table, and let me just phrase this column. So I'll just do view phrase up to column A. All right. So the reason why I want to phrase this is because I want to be able to scroll down and not lose track of this. So I want to come here, and then I would say I want to see, it's asking, the question is saying the earliest and latest transaction date for each account. So I want to just add it here because on this customer list, there are unique values. So I would just say earliest date. Let me just be more specific. Earliest transaction and latest transaction. Okay, so for the earliest transaction, obviously you have to connect with the transactions, isn't it? So here we have the transaction dates. Okay, so that means this is a transaction, this is the account number. So we don't know if this was the first transaction he or she made. All right, we don't know if this is the latest or the last transaction the person has made. So we are trying to get that. Okay, so now let's do this. To get the earliest transaction, let me also freeze this column. So I will just show you something very quick. So now, to get the earliest transaction for this column, all I just need to do is to say, I need to get the minimum. Yes, is that tricky, right? This is something that even in programming, that's how you get the earliest and latest when it comes to dates. So the minimum of this should give me this. This is meant to be the earliest transaction. The maximum of this column should give me this. So this means that in all these transactions, this is the earliest and this is the latest. Wow. This data set is even way ahead of us in 2026. Okay, so this is the earliest transaction. This is the latest. Okay, so how can we apply that to each of the accounts? Now, let's go to this place. So remember that we are dealing with a condition again. So that means for the earliest transaction, we are dealing with the minimum value, right? So, but we have to add the condition. And luckily for us, we have a condition called min ifs. So this is finding the minimum if this condition is true. So as simple as that. So it's asking for the range, which means which value or which column do we want to get that minimum, transaction from. That is going to be the date column, okay, which is the transaction date. So I click on my sheet and I go to E2 to E. That's where I want to get it. Now then, it's asking what is the criteria range. So the condition I want to apply, no, those values exist in which of the columns. So remember, it's based on the account number, which is here, okay, B2B. Now that I have selected the column for that criteria where the range of items should be in the criteria range, what criteria am I referring to? So I come back to customer and I say, this is the criteria. So look for A2 in transactions B2 to B and gets me the value here. That's what it means. Okay, so if I press enter keyboard, it shows me this. Okay, that's because the formatting is not, is this is, I can just simply go to formats after highlighting the column. I go to number and I go to date. It just tells me this is earliest transaction. Remember, because I want to drag this down, I need to lock these ranges. So I need to lock these ranges. But I'm not locking this because it will change across the columns. Now, I will just copy this because I would copy this because this is more like the exact thing needed for the the latest transaction, which is going to be a max ifs. So max if is going to be the same pattern, just the name. So I don't need to rewrite this. Okay. So if I do this, it gives me this. And remember what we did here, we'll just change it to this. So it tells me that this is the earliest transaction of this account number and it's the latest transaction. So I could just highlight this and double click on this edge and I can see their earliest transaction and their latest transactions. Okay, so that's how to get the earliest and latest when it comes to dates. And it's a normal thing that happens even among some level of analysts, even engineers and data specialists tend to easily forget that with just a simple max or mean, that gives you this that we just applied. Okay, so this logic is very important. As simple as it may sound, it can save you a whole lot. All right, so now that we have achieved that, let's see what we can do. We're trying to calculate the total number of transactions per account. The total number of transactions per account. Remember, we did this when we're talking about the branch, that gave us 85 because we, instead of calculating the total accounts that a branch had, we kind of calculated the total transactions that the branch had. Now, this is the question that deals with transactions. So it's saying calculate the total number of transactions per account. So that means I want to see all the activities that you have done. I want to get the number of activities that you have done. So this does not matter if they are duplicates, okay? In that, like if that account has appeared multiple times. So now we can go ahead in. I could still go ahead with this, okay? Because the question says per account. That would be per account number. So I would just say number of transactions. All right. So here, what I would do here is I just need to count if. That is all. Just count if. So I would say count if this range, I will just go to transactions. So what I'm saying here is anywhere you just see this account number, count all the items. Okay, just count how many times this account number appeared in this transactions table. That's all I need. Okay, you could do it the other ways. You can see how we looked at count unique ifs and then we later use count if to achieve the same result. So it all depends on how you understand your data. So it's better to think of it in a smarter way to save you the time and the complexity of the formula. So as much as you can do, if you can achieve the same thing with a simpler formula or a neater formula, then it's better because most times you kind of come back to this sheet to try to understand what you did. And so, or maybe you do these activities in a company and then you leave and somebody else come to work on it, and then it takes the person a lot of time to try to understand what you did or how you achieved something. Okay, so if as much as possible, if you can make it simple, then that's better. Okay, because less is more. Okay, so now I'm counting just this column in this transactions table. Okay, so I'm counting it based on the fact that if I come to this, it should check for this number or these account details in this particular transactions column, and it tells me 38. Remember, I locked it, so I didn't lock. Yeah, I locked it. So you see what I did here is, even though I don't lock this B, but I locked the two, it's still going to give me the same value. So if I click here, nothing changed it, because when you are going down the row or down the column, sorry, when you are going down the column, what you are doing is going across the rows, okay? And that is the, let's not make it complicated, right? So when you are dragging down, what changes is the number. But when you are dragging to the right or to the left, what changes is the alphabet. For example, if I drag this to the right, if I double click on this, I'll see it is a C, but the two did not change, right? If I drag this down, I'll see that it is a C. Okay, if I did not lock these two and I drag this down, I'll see that it is a C, which the alphabet did not change, but the number 3 changed. So when you are dragging to the right or to the left, it's just like a simple hack. When you're dragging to the right or to the left, the alphabet changes. When you're dragging down, the number changes. So if what you are trying to achieve, you don't want the, if you are dragging down and you don't want the numbers to change, you can just lock only the numbers. Okay. If you are dragging to the right and you don't want, the alphabet to change, you can just lock only the alphabet. The numbers will not change when you're dragging to the right. The alphabet will not change when you're dragging down. Okay. So when you're dragging down, the number changes. We are dragging right or left, the alphabet changes. Okay. We are dragging up or down, the number changes. All right. So that means if I just lock this number, then I'm still safe. Okay. So if I just double click on this, if I click here, you see that it's still the alphabet. The number did not change because I locked only the number and nothing happened. So if I do this, the alphabet is still same, the number did not change. But if I did not lock the number, bringing this down was going to change the numbers. Okay, so that's how to understand, it's more of a basic understanding of absolutes and, um, and relative referencing. Okay, so now we've gotten the number of transactions per account. This is now asking how many deposits and withdrawals has each customer made. It's getting deeper. So now we are not just getting the transactions per account. We also want to get transactions that were withdrawals, transactions that were deposits. So let's do this. I'll still come back to these customers. And so what I would just say is say number of, let's just say number of deposits. Okay. Then I would say here number of withdrawals. So remember what we did here was count if, right? So what do you want to achieve? You need to understand the logic. So I want to count if I want to count the transactions based on two conditions. If the account number is this, and if the transaction is deposit. Those are two conditions. So that is why I'm not going to use count if. I would have to use count ifs, which is the plural of count if. So because count if can only allow me to choose based on one condition, but count ifs is going to make me, give me the opportunity to choose more than one condition. So what I want is more than one condition. So I'm saying the criteria range first. Okay, so it's asking what's the first criteria? So the first criteria is that in my transactions table, let me have this, okay? The range for the account number should, the criteria should be account number. That's what it means, okay? So then is also asking, okay, what is your second criteria range and criteria? So the second one is if this transaction is deposit or withdrawal. So I'm going to go back to these transactions and I will go to the table that has this transactions type. And I say, okay, check for F2 to F. Now, what is the criteria? I want the criteria to be deposit. I can type this, okay? I want the criteria to be deposit. When I do this, I have this, okay? I have this. So I have 18 transactions that are deposits. That means if I'm correct, the withdrawal should be 20 so that my normal transaction should be 38, right? So what I would do here is instead of rewriting all these things, which is almost the same thing because the deposit and withdrawals is in the same column. First of all, remember that it is one range. So I have to lock it. Okay, I have to lock the ranges. Don't forget to always try to lock the ranges. Now, I would copy this formula and I will paste it here. It's going to give me the same value, right? Because I didn't change anything. But this is what I want to do. I want to check. This is how it is spelled. You have to get the exact spelling. So instead of just typing it, let me just copy that, the withdrawal. So when I come to customers, instead of deposits, I am pasting withdrawals. So give me the one that says withdrawal. And if I press this, I have 18 and I have 20. 18 plus 20 is 38. So this is another way you can check if this was right. Because if the number of transactions are 38 and the combination of deposit and withdrawals don't give you 38, and these are the only transaction type that you have in the bank, then you have to investigate what's wrong. Is it your formula or is it a kind of missing data or was a transaction made and an account type was not given to it? Those are things that help you understand, the validity or the integrity of, the analysis or even the data set itself. All right, so I would highlight this and then I would just double click at the edge and then we have this. 10 plus 20 is going to give you 34. So obviously these are right. You can just go further by doing a sum of these two. Then you compare if this is correct. Okay. So for example, we could do something like that. So what I could do is I could say 20, this plus this should give me 38. Now, this is also a challenge because I can't, if I do this, obviously it gives me what I want, right? But if you have a large data set, it might not be easy for you to detect if this is wrong. You could just keep it, as you're trying to check if this summation is the same with this particular one. So I can give you like a trick to do that. So what we would do here is we would check based on condition. So this is what I would say. I would say, let me write it here. Okay. So I want to say something like if the sum of say A plus B equals maybe let's say the sum of B plus C equals A, right? Then say it's okay. Say it's okay. Else not okay. Okay. So that's what we want to achieve. So in spreadsheets, I would say if this is how we'll write it, if open the parentheses, the sum of B plus C, which is just B plus C, equals A, then what are we going to say? It's okay, right? So I will just type okay. Else, that means if it is not equals A, just say it's not okay. So this is what I would use here. So if I press this here, it's not exactly giving. If I do this here, what do I have? It's showing me an error why there is something wrong. Okay, so but this is how there's meant to be. This is meant to be like this. Okay, so let's adjust it. Now, what we want to say is if k plus j, right? So if k, and you're going to say k2, right? Plus j2, k2, if k2 plus j2 equals I2, then say it is okay. Else, it's not okay. Have you seen that? So if I just take this route, you would see you're just in everything is okay. All right. So sometimes, like, let's say, for example, this was 5. You see, it said it's not okay because 24 plus 5 can't give you 34. So with this, you can easily, check. Sometimes you could also see that, okay, not okay, you could also miss it. So I could just change the formula, right? I could just say if k this plus this, if it's okay, just don't say anything. Just give me a blank space. If it's not okay, then do that, okay? So if I drag this down, you see, everything is blank except this. If this comes back to its normal state, it's blank, right? So I could use this to, I could just call this column, check. And this is a form of troubleshooting, all right? So you can easily spot what's not correct, and then you try to make your next decision. Okay, so yeah, we'll be wrapping up very soon. I guess this is going to come up again in another way. All right, so let's see if we can wrap up with these two questions, and then probably another video is going to handle the remaining. Okay, so we have gotten the how many deposits and withdrawals has each customer made. Find the total transaction amounts separately for deposits and withdrawals per customer. Interested? So you see, what we are trying to find out now is no longer the number of transactions for withdrawals or deposits. We're trying to find out the sum. So what is the volume of transaction? What's the worth of transaction? So let's just go there. We can still continue that in our customers table. And then we'll just do this amounts, or let's say withdrawal amount, and we have deposit amount. All right. So now what we would do here is we are not counting now. What we want to do is to add all the transactions, this is a transaction amount, right? So we want to add all these items, but based on the fact that it is a deposit and it is for a particular account number. So there are two conditions. Remember what we said about two conditions? You have to use a plural if, to attach with the function you're trying to work with. So it is a combination of two functions, right? So the first function is a sum function, and the next function is the if function. But because you're dealing with two conditions, it has to be some ifs. Now, what I want to do is the first thing here, always look at the helper here, right? It makes things easier for you. You can't memorize the whole pattern of, getting a formula right, okay? So now I have to check the sum range. The sum range is going to be, transactions, and I will use transaction amounts here. So I'm using sum if because I want to add. So adding is a form of aggregation, and that is sum. Okay, so even count is aggregation, but count is different from sum. Okay, so and remember we are adding the amount. We want to know if you withdrew money today, you withdrew tomorrow, you withdraw tomorrow, you withdrew like yesterday. Let's see the combination of all those monies that you withdrew. What's the value of all those monies? So that's what we are trying to achieve here. So I'll say this is G to G. That's the sum range. The next thing on the helper formula says the criteria range. So remember, we are dealing with two conditions. So that's the same thing as criteria. So what's the first criteria? Is the account number, right? So I'll come here, B2 to B. And then you don't have to choose, you don't have to select which should be the first criteria or not. In any order you can arrange the criteria, it works. Okay, so it doesn't have to be account number first. It could be account number, it could be, the type of transactions, it could be, you could switch them. Okay, so there is no specific order. So now I want to check based on the account number, which of the account numbers am I dealing with. I come back to my customer table and I choose this, putting my comma to select the next criteria. So the next criteria is going to be the transaction type, which is either deposit or withdrawal. So I do F2 to F, and then I can type in my deposit. It gives me this. So far, oh, this is withdrawal, not deposit. Okay. So we are in the withdrawal column. So I'll just say withdrawal and this. So far, this is the withdrawal. And I would just have to, lock the ranges, right? So you don't have to try to think to be very careful. Just lock everything, okay? Just to be on the safe side. Instead of checking which one to lock, is it the row or the column? But since, the ranges would be the same. Okay, so I'm only leaving this A2 aside. I didn't lock this part. Okay, so now if if I copy this, there are two ways of copying it, right? What I've been doing is to copy it inside inside the cell, just copy the formula direct. But if you just copied the cell and paste it here, it transfers, it transfers the effect of it here. Okay, so there's difference between copying the formula itself and copying the cell with the formula. So if I did not lock these items, let me show you what I mean. Let's say I did not lock these items. Remember I said when you're going to the right, what changes? The alphabet. So let's not lock this G, only G. Okay, let's not lock this G. And look at what happens. If I copy this formula, that is, I double clicked on the cell and then copied this formula. I double click on this and paste it. It's the exact thing I copied that is pasted here. But if I copied this cell and I pasted it here, if I double click on this, you can see that something has changed. This column has changed to H, right? So your copying attitude has an effect. The type of copy you do has an effect. Copying the cell itself, just does a transfer of, the elements. If it is a relative referencing, it just thinks that you want to adjust it. Okay, it can be a smart way, but it can also be dangerous for you. So when you want to copy, just understand what, the kind of copying you are doing. So if you are copying from just the cell, it adjusts based on the new area you are trying to copy it into. Okay, but if you are copying the formulas itself, it doesn't change anything, right? You just paste it and it gives the exact thing that you copied from there. So you have to know the difference. Okay, all right. So I would go back and lock in this, and all I just want to do is to change this to deposits. All right, so then I can just highlight this and double click, and that's all. So I have the withdrawal amount of, this account number and the deposits, right? So you could also use this to understand certain things, because there is no way the withdrawal amount should be more than the deposit, except maybe a loan has gotten involved. Okay, so you could also do another check column to see if this deposit is smaller than the withdrawal or vice versa, okay? Because you can't withdraw more than what you deposited in the right setting, except there is an overdraft. Okay, so now we are done with that, and I think we should be rounding up with this last question. What is the total transaction amount per branch for the month of July 2025? Interesting. So we have two things here. We have the total transaction. We have the total transaction amount is one. We have that it should be per branch and it should be for the month of July. So these are specifics, okay? So I'm not just getting the total transaction, but I'm getting it based on the fact that the month is July. So now, if we go to these transactions, we discover that, we have, where is it? We have the transaction date. How are we going to get the month from here? So the easiest way is to get the month. Okay, there are ways you can still get that directly from this, but it will be a bit more complex, your formula. But the best way, if possible, is to create a month table here. And then I would also create a year, because it's not just indicating the month. That's another mistake some persons could make when they rush in analysis. So it's not just talking about the month, because you could have July 2025, you could have July 2026, you could have July for other years. And so it's going to aggregate for all those ones. So I want to have based on July and also 2025. So how am I going to do this? So I will come here. So I have my year, I have my month. And so what I will do here is a simple formula. Again, don't worry. And it's called the text formula. Now, this text just helps us to extract certain information or, revamp the formatting. So I want to say, I want to select this date, but I want it to only extract the year. So what I would say is just give me YYY. Okay, that is all. That is all. There is, I think you could use the year formula, and all you just need to do is put the dates. Yeah, that's another one. Okay, so I think this is like easy. Now all I just need is click, double click, and we have this, right? So yes, then I could say the month. We could also have the month formula, right? So this is the month, and we choose the date. The only thing about the month is that it's going to show you this in numbers 5, 5, 5, and all the stuff. So it is not bad. You could use that for analysis, because 5 definitely means, I think, May, right? So if you want to choose, based on numbers, like the numerical representation of the month, then that's fine. But if you want to see the months fully written, then you also have to, work on this. That's when you use the text formula, right? Or the text function. So when you do this, I just click on the date, comma, and for this format, I will just use M. M is going to give me the number. If you see that, this is M. It's give me the number. But what's the difference between this and just using the month function, which is easier? But I could just add another M, and it will give me with the leading zero. Oh, yeah. So that's 05, right? But if I add another M, it gives me May, right? So if you want to have the full name, you could just use MMM. Okay. If I do this, I think if you have it's let's see. I think this is an abbreviation. Yeah, this is an abbreviation. This is June, Jun. So if you want to have the full name, you have to make it 4 M's. You know that May is already just 3 letters, so you might not know that this is not the full name. So if I go through this, you can see this is June completely written, this is July completely written. So the text formula gives you more flexibility in choosing how you want it to appear, especially when you want to deal with months. Sometimes you want to go further to deal with the date and time, where you just add column, or you do some hours, minutes, seconds. You could use that to format it properly. All right. So hopefully we are going to treat, those formatting, maybe subsequent times. All right. Now we have the year, we have the month, so we can achieve what we're trying to get here. So it's saying the total transactions per branch. So that means we need to have the branch. And I think we had a sheet here that had the branches. Yes. So let's say we want to have, the branch, what were we trying to get? The total transactions. That should be number of transactions. So for this, what we would just have is Abuja. How many transactions could we get in Abuja? So we need the condition that it is this branch and the condition also that it is that month. So there are two conditions, and I'm counting. So it's going to be a count if. Now we need to be careful. Are we talking about what is the total transaction amount? Interesting. So that's another thing we need to be careful about. So it is not the number of transactions, it's the value of the transaction. So we cannot use count if. So we have to use sum if. So this is sum if, but we are dealing with multiple conditions, which is right. So about that. So we are dealing with um I said we are working with some if, okay? So we are dealing with multiple transactions, right? And this is some ifs, right? And we are dealing with multiple criteria, okay? So now I am summing based on what range. I would like to put my helper formulas here, okay? I'm trying to sum based on this transaction range. And then what is the criteria? The criteria is that this to this should be equal to, okay, sorry, this plus this is the criteria range, and this, oh, sorry about that. Yeah. Let's look at it gradually. We have the sum range, and yes, then we have this, okay? Then we have the criterion, which is, say, July. Then what else do we have? Another one is the branch. So we have the branch, which is D2 to D, and it should be based on whatever branch that is here. So for this branch, this is how much they made, okay? And I would lock the formula. Lock this. Okay. So lock this. Just take your time and lock these formulas. Lock this range. And here we go. So if I do this, these are the transactions in July. Okay. You could modify this to make it better by probably, just maybe putting a drop down list here, say data validation, add the rule, drop from a range. Then I want to select from the transactions, I just want to select this column here, which is the month. And I have this. If I go back to that sheet, I can choose the month. So if I choose July, let's do this separately. So I will just copy this, okay? And I will paste it here. Close this. So I'll paste it here. So instead of typing July, I would reference it to this particular cell. right? So if I run this here, oh, what happened? Oh, okay. I did not lock that cell. So that's what it means. So yeah, since I'm getting it just from this cell, I need to lock that cell I chose. Okay, so if I drag this down, it gives me that. The same value, right? But look at what happens. If I want to change this to June, the value changes, So September, so it's automating, okay? But remember that what you did here is not absolutely correct. There is another condition that we failed to also involve. And let me take this back to July so you see the difference. There is another condition. And what was the condition? That it has to be in 2025. So I would come here and I have to add another criteria range. So I come here and I click on this, I2 to I, and I say it should be 2025. Give me this. If I lock this and I drag this down, it's the same thing, right? It's the same thing, but it could be different, if there were some transactions there. But this is 2025, and let me copy this formula and put it here. So in this case, we might have to, adjust this. So now what this does is this is 2025, right? Is given. So any month that I change here, these things, what is here is just likely to change. Oh, I did not involve, I didn't put the A2 here. Okay, I need to change this to A2 so it changes with that. So if I change this to July, it's giving me July, but for 2025. If I change this to September, it's giving me this, but for 2025. All right. So I could still add another drop down for the years and then adjust this that instead of 2025, it should be for that drop down that's carried the year, right? Like now that we have 2025 here, I could just change this instead of 2025. I could say this should be for A1, right? And so if I change this to 2026, it's showing me zero. If I change to 2024, which I'm not sure we have any data there, yeah. Okay, so that's how you could make your work cleaner, automated, and very expressive. So we have covered 8 questions, interesting, very interesting questions and very useful questions. And as time goes on, we would cover, other things. All right. So this data set will be available in the link as explained. Thank you and have a nice day.